Hundreds killed calling for change in Iraq. Now the Prime Minister looks ready to resign, but will that be enough to appease protesters who've watched their own security forces try to crush their cause? I'm Imran Garda, and today's newsmaker is Prime Minister Adil Abdul-mahdi. A few weeks ago on this show, we asked what it would take to end Iraq's deadly protests. Back then, more than 100 people had died. Now that death toll has more than doubled as security forces use lethal force to crack down on demonstrators. Despite the risks, protesters haven't gone anywhere. They're still angry over high unemployment, a poor economy, and a corrupt elite. They want to overhaul the government and won't accept anything less. First, the Prime Minister promised reforms, everything from slashing the salaries of top officials to creating opportunities for young people. It wasn't enough. Add pressure from the two largest Shia political blocs, and on Thursday, the President announced that Prime Minister Adil Abdul-mahdi had agreed to quit, but with one big caveat. His political rivals must first agree on his replacement. For more, here's Dhiaa al Asadi.
Iraq's people are rising up. Tens of thousands are protesting in major cities. They say their leaders have failed them.
We want a total change of governments. We don't want the firing of one or two officials and replacing them with another corrupt one. We want the government to be uprooted totally.
The rallies began spontaneously last month. People say they are angry about corruption, unemployment, and poor public services. But the demonstrations have been deadly. Since the rallies began, at least 250 people have been killed. Security forces have been firing live ammunition at the crowds. Amnesty International says riot police have also been using military-grade tear gas grenades and firing them at point-blank range. Karbala, a city holy to Shia Muslims, hasn't been spared. Police killed at least 18 protesters there. But the city's governor dismissed the reports as fake news. Iraq's Prime Minister Adil Abdul-mahdi is becoming more isolated and has offered to resign. The president agrees, but with conditions.
The Prime Minister had previously agreed to submit his resignation if the political blocs agree on an acceptable replacement in order to adhere to constitutional and legal frameworks that will avoid any constitutional vacuum.
Abdul-mahdi has also been abandoned by one of his main supporters in parliament, Muqtada al-Sadr. The cleric leads the largest bloc. He was seen joining protesters in the city of Najaf. Sadr and his main rival chose Abdul-mahdi as a compromise candidate last year, after they each failed to secure enough votes to form a government. Iraq has been relatively stable since Daesh was defeated there 2 years ago. But this calm has been shattered. Will replacing the Prime Minister solve Iraq's troubles? And will Abdul-mahdi's resignation placate the protesters? Dhiaa al Asadi, the Newsmakers.
Well, to try and answer that, we're joined here in the studio by Ahmed Rushdi. He's a senior foreign policy advisor to the Iraqi parliament. In Basra is Dhiaa al Asadi. He's been a political representative to Shia cleric Muqtada Sadr and is a former Iraqi MP. Saad al Muttalibi is a member of Baghdad's local government with the ruling State of Law Alliance. And Murtadha Faisal is a filmmaker who's been at the protests in Baghdad. Gentlemen, a pleasure having you on the Newsmakers. Ahmed Rushdi, welcome back to the program. The last time we spoke about this very thing. It only got worse. It's no joke, more than 250 people have been killed. Is it inevitable that the Prime Minister will resign and must resign?
In a way or another, I don't think Adil Abdul-mahdi will resign now. I think all the questions have been answered, that we need some sort of a constitutional roadmap to end up with the resignation. That's what the President said. that what the parliament said, but at the end, the people, honestly speaking, they are targeting Adil Abdul-mahdi in a way or another to solve the problem. They are saying to solve the problem, we need first his resignation. Maybe it's not practical, maybe it's not constitutional, but still it's the people demand.
Dhiaa al Asadi, have the people had their questions answered? Is the government listening to the people out on the streets?
Successive or previous governments could answer the demands of people since 2012.
Okay, we have an audio issue with Dhiaa al Asadi because we're hearing some fallback there. So, okay, we'll try and go back to Dhiaa al Asadi in a moment or two. We'll just try and sort out the audio there. Apologies for that. Saad al Muttalibi, let me pose that question to you then. We've seen terrible scenes on the streets. The government's trying to find solutions here. Is it actually listening to the people?
Yes, they are listening, but they're not understanding what the demonstrators are saying. The demonstrators are not complaining of a particular prime minister or a president or even the parliament. Demonstrators are talking about the whole regime, the structure, the political structure in Iraq is at fault. And the population, those who are demonstrating and those who are not, they all agree on one thing, that this institution, this political institution is corrupt. This institution needs to be replaced. The problem is, which is a very practical problem, how is that could be done? Because you can't remove a prime minister without a replacement. You can't legislate a new election law without a parliament. You can't form a new independent commission for the elections without the parliament again. And you can't even vote for a government without the parliament. We are, after all, a parliamentarian system. And I think the people are saying is the parliamentarian system in Iraq has failed. And even today, the jurisprudence in Najaf, the Marja'iyya, were very clear and said that in a statement that the people must be allowed to choose the type of regime that suits them. And nobody, and that includes nobody, internally or externally, should be allowed to interfere in Iraqi affairs or to hijack the Iraqi say or the Iraqi people's decision. So yes, the government is listening, but they can't understand the language.
Right, and this is very interesting because the parameters seem to be very different here. Murtadha Faisal, you've been on the street. Just how much of a gap is there between the leadership and the people? Because the leadership is saying, okay, we know you want change, but it has to follow certain procedures based on the current social contract that we all have and the laws that we currently have. Will the people ever accept that, or do they want everything chucked out?
Yeah, good evening. The thing is, I think, is the government doesn't understand this new generation, you know. The generation that was born after the dictatorship. You know, those young kids, they never seen Saddam, they never seen all this kind of things, and they are more open-minded and they are more aware about the things that's happening around them. They want normal lives, you know. They want just the simple things, but the government is not providing them, and they understood that, the protesters understood that the problem is the system itself, you know, not any particular government.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just so everybody knows, we're trying very hard behind the scenes to get Dhiaa al Asadi back up and running. There's an audio issue with his Skype because it's going to be really good to get that perspective. Hopefully within the next 15 minutes or so we'll get him up because I'm curious to hear what he has to say. Ahmed Rushdi, it's not a good look that people are not calling for revolution as such. Well, they didn't start off calling for revolution. Maybe some are calling for it now on the streets as more and more people die. But then they're getting shot dead with live ammunition. We've got these tear gas canisters that are piercing people's brains. More than 250 people are dead. This is a low estimation as well, right? They're just calling for basic things. They're saying end corruption. They're saying we want jobs. What's going on? Security forces are treating them as if they are Daesh on the streets and killing them. It's a terrible look. Are you embarrassed as somebody who represents Iraq to the outside world?
Well, the most important thing is that the people, the demonstrators, they are actually looking for the future of Iraq. In one way or another, they are looking for the future of their children. They are not asking something impossible. They are not asking to change the regime, just like Mr. Saad said. No way. Because they know very well the parliamentary system is the hope of Iraq, because everybody will be inside the parliament. Yeah, maybe corruption is still inside the parliament, inside the government, and so on. Yeah, it's possible now. But for the future-wise, people actually looking for the future-wise. That's why it's not only the security forces killing them. They are accepting to die for the future of Iraq. So we need to balance things here, is that the demonstrator demands, it's not a simple demands. They're not looking for only to solve the unemployment, only to solve the services, but to look forward for the future. The same thing happened in the parliament and in the government. They are listening to the people, and they try to manage their demands according to the system that's still now.
Yeah, these people don't want to lose their jobs as well, right?
Yeah, of course.
Right?
Of course.
And
but
protesters
at the same,
are saying, well, you're putting yourself
that's why
first
they
then.
should. That's why they should listen to the protesters and listen to the demands and try to modify those demands as soon as possible.
Right.
Because now the demonstrators are, honestly speaking, they are not asking for changing the regime. But
Right.
they are asking for demands. Don't push the demonstrators to go further in their demands, because it will be a chaotic situation at the end.
Yeah, and as if it's not chaotic enough as it is right
Yeah,
now, right?
yeah.
Saad al Muttalibi. So this is something I wanted to ask Dhiaa al Asadi, but he's not up yet. Hopefully we'll get him up, right? So the theory goes, Hadi al-Amiri and Muqtada Sadr were trying to oust the prime minister over the past week, but Iran intervened and said, nah, not now. Is that a fact?
No, the fact is that Mr. al-Sadr decided that the prime minister should leave and should present his resignation in an official letter. But Mr. Hadi al-Amiri, who understands the situation from a different view, and his idea was that let's prepare the replacement, and then we could ask Mr. Prime Minister to present his resignation. Now, what I'd like to go back to one point where I'm just as a proof of that the government and the institution is not listening to the people, is what your honorable guest, Mr. Ahmed Rushdi, just said. They are not listening to the people saying we want a change of regime. What you said, what Mr. Ahmed said, was very correct on the 1st of October. But on the 25th of October, things have changed. And the latest, this morning, my people were in Tahrir Square, and they came back to me with a unanimous understanding that everybody who spoke to my people, they said that we are for a change of regime, not a change of institution, not the minor changes. And they were very clear and saying that the parliamentarian system, after 3 times, has failed to present the services required to the nation. They failed to present the legal laws that would aid the population for a better investment and for a better economic environment. This is what I heard this morning.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. And it's good to hear that from you. It's good to hear you have your people with their ear to the ground there in Tahrir Square. So Ahmed Rushdi, this is stale news. You're claiming that you're listening to the people, or this government's listening to the people. It's moved on. It's now in a more, perhaps, revolutionary phase. They're saying, no, we have to scrap everything.
To scrap everything, to change it to the presidential system. Okay, what are the guarantees it will not be corrupted? What are the guarantees? No one going to guarantee something like that. So it means that we need to listen to the people carefully. If they're going to say we need to rush up all the system, so what's your what is the substitution? This is the first impression will have in the minds of the people
themselves. Do you think there'll be anarchy in the immediate aftermath?
I don't think the people until now managed to reach this point. I'm afraid is that they're going to be pushed to reach this point because the demands are actually not listened by the government. It's not really being pushed to be solved because when the demands claimed and put in the hand of the parliament, then the parliament put in the hand of the government said we don't have such a kind of money to solve all those problems. And let us not forget, Abadi, actually, when he went out, in the financial budget, we have $40 billion in 1 year. Now we have debts about $138 billion.
I think everybody can agree that it's being wrecked,
in 1 year.
Right?
So,
and I think the protesters are making that clear. One of the other things, Murtadha Faisal, that the protesters are making clear is that a lot of them are showing anti-Iranian slogans, and this is very interesting. I mean, I've seen videos and I've seen images of them beating images of Khamenei, for example, right? And we have these slogans that are anti-Iran, Iran barra barra, and so on. How much of that is happening on the streets, Murtadha? You've been there. How much of this is the protesters saying we don't want the Iranians to interfere in our country?
Hello?
Okay, Murtadha can't hear. Okay, we're having a bit of a technical nightmare here today. Let me take that and repurpose it for Saad al Muttalibi. Are the protesters right? Or are they exaggerating when they talk of the Iranian influence? Especially when you see Qasem Soleimani come to the country, right? They're thinking, well, this is our country. We're a sovereign country. Why does Iran have to get involved?
Well, the general perception is that, yes, that there are two major players in Iraq, and those are America and Iran. And there is a conflict between America and Iran, and the Iraqi people are paying the price. This is the general conception. This is what people believe. And you cannot go and tell people you can't believe that. They believe, or they were led to believe, that the major threat to Iraq...
is it true? That's the question I'm asking.
Partially, yes, but not entirely.
I see. Ahmed
No,
Rushdi?
not entirely.
Okay.
Not entirely.
Right. Okay.
Again, and not entirely. The Americans also have such a control.
Okay. So Ahmed Rushdi, partially, yes. I know you've not agreed fully with Saad al Muttalibi throughout this discussion, but do you agree that that perception is rooted in something that's real, that the people are not happy with the Iranian influence on their country?
I think so, yes. In a way or another, the people actually is looking for Iran as a neighbor who has a very powerful influence inside Iraq. This is the problem that have been since 2003 in a way or another. Now, how much it is exaggerated, this is the main question. And let us not forget, in Karbala, people actually demonstrated against the Iranian consulate in Karbala and try to manage themselves in front of the security forces there. It shows you that the Iraqi people, even in the south, have something against the Iranian presence.
They would be expected, if people look at Iraq through a sectarian lens, they expect, well, if you're an Iraqi Shia in the south, naturally you would not want to demonstrate against Iran. Has that been debunked now?
In a way or another, yes. It shows you that the people, especially in the south, blaming Iran for corruption, blaming Iran for unemployment, blaming Iran for poor services, which is not right. But at the end, the Iranian presence in Iraq, in a way or another, being in between the demonstrators and the Iraqi government. And it's a simple and easy slogan to be raising up, is that because of the Iranian influence in Iraq, we have blah, blah, blah. It's all those problems that have been in the Iraqi society since 2003.
Right.
The most important thing is that the Iraqi government should have their way to convince people is that it's our responsibility, we need to solve the problems.
Right, okay, we've got Murtadha back. He can hear us, thankfully. Murtadha, just how heavy is the anti-Iranian sentiment on the streets?
Yeah, I mean, you can hear it like what you said, but in general, is the protest is for Iraq, you know, is to have an independent country, you know, without any intervention. And
are you hearing your voice? Are you hearing your voice coming back in your? I know. I think you're getting a feedback issue, and that's horrible. I know it's a nightmare. So you can power through. If you don't want to continue, that's fine. If you want to finish your point, go ahead, because I know this is very difficult. Okay, I've only got a. Okay, yeah.
So
go ahead. Finish your point, please, sir.
Yeah, sorry, but the line, I couldn't hear you really well. Yeah, so the point is the people are, you know, not just Iraq, whether it's anti-Iran or any other government, but in general, I think it's a matter of a country. It's a matter of one united Iraq, you know. With and now you go to Tahrir Square, you see all Iraqis from different backgrounds, different religions, different things, you know. They are all together and shouting for one country and calling for one settled state.
Right, and I think that's really important, because this has been across sectarian lines. Saad al Muttalibi, I don't like to find common threads between different countries, because every country is its own story with its own context, but it's hard not to see similarities with what is happening in Lebanon, for example. I wonder, when Saad al-Hariri in Lebanon says, I'm resigning, has that had an impact both ways, in the government and in terms of those people on the streets? Is there going to be some contagion here?
Well, the problem with Iraq is different, because Michel Aoun is not trying to annex a Lebanese city to his department. For we have, if the Prime Minister today resigns, the legislation or the constitution will indicate that the president will be in charge of both arms of the executive powers. And who says that he will not withdraw the Iraqi army from Kirkuk and leaving Kirkuk exposed to the Peshmerga? What would stop him from doing that? So therefore, we have another layer of problems. If the Prime Minister were to resign today and hand power without having a replacement, then the power will be handed to Barham Saleh. Dr. Barham is a Kurd. And it's very easy, being the commander-in-chief of the Iraqi armed forces, he doesn't have to do much, only pull the Golden Brigade from Kirkuk, and that's it. Kirkuk, with its oil fields, is handed back to the KRG, to the Kurdish government, regional government. And then we have a new problem altogether. And how to solve that without blood, that is a really, really complicated picture.
Okay, less than a minute left on the discussion. Ahmed Rushdi, very briefly, sir. Can you still extract some optimism at all, given what's happening on the ground right now?
Of course. They are Iraqi people. They are in the streets.
But they're getting gunned down by their own government.
Yeah, but at the end, the people staying and the governments actually went out. It's always like that. So the Iraqi people on the streets want demands, want the future. It's something new in the Iraqi society, I think since the 70s, because now people looking for the future in a way or another, that pushing the politicians to be more positive, less corrupted in a way or another, to rebuild Iraq.
Right. Okay. In the next couple of weeks, we'll revisit the Iraqi story. We'll be following it closely. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure talking to all of you. Ahmed Rushdi, Saad al Muttalibi, and Murtadha Faisal, and earlier Dhiaa al Asadi. Unfortunately, we couldn't get him on. It was a technical minefield, but you've all been great. I thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Thank you for watching this episode of the Newsmakers. See you next time. Bye-bye.